You want to know what the topic of today's episode is? Well, it's classified, soldier. But you're on a need-to-know basis. Welcome to Pegwarmers, I'm Kevin, and I'm here to talk about toys. Today, we're talking about GI Joe Classified. I have a bunch of new Classified figures that have recently come in. The VAMP, as well as a recent wave of figures, and one of the retro card figures. And I want to talk about them today. And we're going to start off with retro card Recondo. Recondo is part of the retro card series. These are figures that come on packages that look similar but larger than the vintage figures. We've seen them kind of the whole way through Classifieds, slowly building up the number of characters. We've got a Duke and a Scarlet that should be here any day. The Scarlet figure looks fantastic. Recondo I find super interesting because he's not a must-have character to me. He's a great character, and I love the way he looks. I think he's a great military figure. But he just doesn't have a huge role in the GI Joe mythos, so I'm glad to see them producing a figure of him, but a little surprised maybe that he's getting a retro card figure before possibly some of the other characters. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but, you know, they have done a lot of the heavy hitters, for sure. So maybe we are into that B-list group of characters that Recondo might fall into. There's definitely been a lot of love for those first few years with a lot of like 84 characters getting current treatment. So Recondo is an infantry guy with jungle mission specialities. Recondo's got that jungle hat with the side pinned up and his handlebar mustache that really kind of gives him his iconic look. He's wearing a khaki outfit. He almost looks like he could have come with a pith helmet, you know, as an option. And he's got his tiger striped pants. This figure would then eventually get released in Tiger Force, basically by accident, only because he had a passing resemblance to Wild Bill. But he was one of the first Joes to have that sort of tiger striping paint deco, and there's a lot of variants on the original Recondo. This figure kind of does what Classified does best, where it really looks like a vintage figure with maybe one or two little tweaks, little small things to make it better. So Recondo here, like I said, looks like his vintage figure, but they've added a big holster to the side of his leg here for a machete, which is perfect for his character. And that's like the one little update, the one little thing that doesn't make him look exactly like his vintage figure. And I think that's good. I think that's the balance I personally am looking for in this line, is like recreate the original figure, maybe make one little feature work better, or give him the working holster like on his chest. You know, update those kind of features that couldn't really be done at the 3 3/4 inch scale. And I am very happy with these figures. I think he looks fantastic. He does come with a backpack. It's not exactly the Recondo backpack we know and love. It doesn't have the handle on the top. I feel like they're taking a lot of liberties on the backpack. I guess they're making a handful of backpacks that will work well for a lot of different figures. And, you know, I get it. They have to cut some corners here and there. He also comes with a rifle that has some wrappings on it. Again, not exactly a perfect recreation of his vintage accessory, but I'll chalk it up to close enough. I love all the little details. He has a little compass on his belt, and overall, he's just a really great-looking figure. He does come with a figure stand. I guess this is part of the retro series. They have the figure stands. It doesn't work that well. The pegs are pretty short. I tried posing him in sort of a running stance, and he fell over. He's even got his little unit badge tampoed on his shoulder. Another nice attention to detail from his vintage figure. So overall, very happy with Recondo. I think he turned out great. It's been a while since we've had a Pegwarmer segment on Pegwarmers, and today, since we're talking about Classifieds and retro carded figures, I was at Walmart just the other day, and I saw 2 pegs of retro carded Lady J. I'm kind of amazed that the Baroness and Lady J didn't kill the retro line, because they did not sell that well. I had a hard time finding some of the figures. I only have retro carded Gung Ho because a friend was able to pick them up for me. There's a bunch of those retro carded figures I've never seen, and I'm waiting for Duke and Scarlet to come in the mail because I was able to pre-order those. Next up, we've got the VAMP with Clutch. This is the original GI Joe Jeep from 1982, beefed up to the 6-inch scale and with high levels of detail. Now, this is not a retro release. This is true Classifieds. And in Classifieds, they definitely do a lot more modernization and a lot more updates and tweaks. They're inspired by the original stuff, but they're certainly not trying to emulate that quite as perfectly. I'm going to start by taking a look at Clutch. Clutch is an A-list G.I. Joe to me. He's not really an A-list, he's probably a B-list character. He was part of the original 13 Joes, so he got a lot of action in the comic early on. And he is a character that Larry Hama hung on to and used throughout the series. I love Clutch because when I was in college, I did a stop-motion animated Toy Story in the dorm room kind of show, and Clutch was one of the main characters, and he was voiced by one of my best friends, Brian.
Oh, come on, please!
Get your tire irons, boys. We're gonna be under attack any minute now. What's he doing?
Same as usual.
Come on, Clutch. This is an emergency.
This sucks.
And so I have a pretty deep love for the character of Clutch, and they have modernized him here. He's wearing a green uniform with some brown details, very much like his original figure. His helmet, again, like most of the guys in this series, much more modern-looking helmet. It has the web gear on it and the chin straps and stuff. Those are the kind of updates that I feel like are really nice in Classifieds compared to, like, the vintage figure. He's got a little bit more hair than perhaps his vintage figure lets on. The vintage figures all have such flat hairstyles that you kind of assume they all have crew cuts. But this Clutch definitely has some detail, some combing going on there. But it does say in his original file card that he greases his hair with motor oil. So having a little bit longer hair that he can style and kind of be a greaser makes a little bit of sense. He's got a removable pistol on his holster, which, in the original figure, that's just sculpted on there. He's got some nice little details with pouches and a little belt that has some details on it, as well as a spot to store the accessory wrench he comes with, which I think is great. That, again, is a nice little update, like Recondo's machete. That's a tool that the character would need. Having a little adjustable wrench is kind of cool. I feel like a mechanic probably uses a socket more than an adjustable wrench, but, adjustable wrenches are more universally understood and recognized as a tool. Symbolic in a way. He does come with an alternate helmet, so I can take off his standard helmet, and he has a Steel Brigade style helmet. This is something that we're seeing more and more with this line, where they're packing some of these guys with this helmet. It allows you to possibly use them as an army builder, or just sort of a new style to the Force, or the Steel Corps, as they're calling them now, instead of the Steel Brigade. Makes me feel a little bit like he might be Doom Guy, or possibly even a Ninja Turtle, now that they paint the teeth on there. There's a lot of accessories that came in this set. It's hard to tell what is supposed to be, like, actually clutches, or the vamps, or whatever, or maybe just options in case you want to use them as a Steel Corps Trooper. But there was an included shotgun, there was an axe, and I kept looking for a place to store the axe on the vamp, and I didn't see one. So possibly it's an accessory for him. Maybe it's an option to put on the hood instead of the shovel. It's hard to tell. So the vamp feels like an upscaled version of the childhood toy. About the right size in your hand, now that your hand's so much bigger than it was when you were 6. It has a lot of cues and a lot of details from the original, as well as some fun updates. It's got big wheels that roll nicely. It doesn't make that annoying screechy sound that the vintage one did as the metal axle rolled through the plastic. Everybody that had the original vamp knows that sound. But they roll nicely. They have a little bit of a rubberized feel to them, like a little bit of a squeeze, which is cool. Front of the vamp has a hood that can actually open to reveal the engine. Engine details a little bit, generic, a little blank. Maybe this is what modern engines look like. I don't think so. But that opens and closes. That's a nice feature, something that the original vamp didn't do. It's got a little, like, bedroll or something that just kind of clips on the front. I kind of like how they've made these things swappable, but I don't really like how it looks without it. And that's a little bit of a shame because the original vamp, maybe it was a little less adorned. There's also this little box. I don't really know what that is. Originally on the 82 vamp, it looks like a gun. This looks more like a exhaust port or a snorkel for the Jeep or something. I don't know. There is a clip over here for a shovel. The original vamp didn't have a shovel, but the Stinger did, and then the Stinger mold got used for a mail-away version of the vamp. So that's a nice feature either way, though, and it still looks good even if you are trying to recreate the original Vamp. It also has a winch on the front. The original Vamp had a winch just kind of sculpted in there, but it didn't work, so that's kind of a nice feature. I don't know if I really need it as far as like incorporating play features into these toys. I don't need them as a collector, but as a kid, this probably would have been pretty fun. Now I'm here busy trying to roll it back in. They're not carabiners, but D-hooks or whatever you want to call those guys on the front here, again, to kind of show it has some toe points. Moving along to the side, you can see there is an opening here for clutch to sit inside. There's a steering wheel, lots of details on the dashboard. Oh, and it has a fold-down windscreen. It's just nice that it has a windscreen at all, windshield, because the original Vamp was just open. The mirrors on this vehicle are incredible because they are actually reflective, and you can... It's just like such a nice little detail that they didn't have to do. They could have just left them black, or they could have just put like a mirrory silver sticker there or some paint, but they're actually reflective. It probably is a sticker or something, but it just looks fantastic. The seats inside are brown, just some nice detailing overall inside. As we move along towards the back, there are these vents on the back that are very reminiscent of the original Jeep. And then you get to like that laser cannon that we're used to, but this time they've modernized it. They've made it a little bit more real world. We now have two, I guess, 50 cal machine guns. They fit on a mounting bracket here that has a little bit of detailing that reminds me of the vintage laser cannon, so that's kind of neat. But they are totally removable. These guns can separate off. The ammo belts and the ammo boxes can be removed. So you could hand them to a figure if you wanted to. Some interesting modularization and usability here that they're designing into the line, for good or for bad. But I probably would have liked that as a kid, having guys be able to, use the weapons from the Jeep as weapons for themselves if need be. If the Jeep breaks down, we can take the gun with us instead of abandoning the Jeep. I don't know. It's all kind of some interesting choices there. I kept looking around to see if any of these other panels or compartments opened. There's like a med kit, there's a tool kit, like decals on it. And I kept looking to see if the axe could go into one of those compartments. There's also a fire extinguisher. I did find that eventually. That actually goes in the front, like in the crew compartment, but by the gun. You can clip this in there. It's a little tricky to get it in there, and I often found that it fell out for me. So that does clip in there. And the back, of course, has the little basket with the gas cans, which is so classic original Jeep. And it's got a tow hook, because you never know, the MMS may be coming out in Joe colors eventually. Overall, a really cool Jeep. It's super well done. I'm sure at this point you've seen other reviews of it, so you probably already know how fantastic it is. Maybe you even know some features that I don't know. There are some clip-on handholds for the side here. There are clip-on lights that you can add to above the windshield or onto the front bumper or push bar. Those are all fun little details. Again, the line Classifieds takes of recreating the original toys, but then plussing them up and modernizing them and adding more details is really fun. So you can kind of create your version of GI Joe. My only real complaint here with this whole set is the tattoos on Clutch. Again, I'm not anti-tattoo, but they really have been, that's kind of like the signature thing. One of the designers really thinks it's cool to put tattoos on GI Joe. They actually call out his tattoos on the back of the package, like that's one of the coolest features on this toy. It's fine that Clutch has tattoos. I don't really need them. This is why I like the retro card series. If they did a retro version of Clutch, it'd be very similar to this probably, but he wouldn't have the tattoos. And I know that I could use acetone to remove them, but I don't really want to have to do that. I don't hate them that much, but I don't know. He's just got these super, trendy, like, race car tattoos on his arms. And if you want to use them as an army builder, now all of your Steel Legion Jeep drivers have the same tattoos. While most of this episode is focusing on things that are new to the collection, I also want to talk about toy news. Hasbro recently announced some new retro-carded figures. We've seen them before. They showed off the retro-carded Beachhead, Eels, and Snow Serpent. We'd seen like digital renders before, but now we've seen the actual toy. Those are going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to being able to pre-order them very soon. Got to get 2 Beachheads. They announced O-Ring Ghostbusters. So these are going to be Ghostbuster figures and the Ecto-1 in the size and scale of the original 3 3/4 G.I. Joes with the original G.I. Joe construction. It's the superior action figure size and aesthetic to me. I love O-Ring figures. They work well with vehicles. They have all the joints you really need to play / pose with elbows and knees and movable heads. Like, it's better than vintage Star Wars. So that's kind of the style I prefer. And I like having lots of toy lines that all can work together. Like Star Wars and G.I. Joe work well together, but He-Man and Ghostbusters never did. X-Men, right? Eventually, Hasbro did make G.I. Joe scaled Marvel figures, which was fantastic. And so I think it's really cool they're doing Ghostbusters. I plan to pick up the Ghostbusters and Ecto-1 when they become available. They also announced a name-only announcement. Was once a man version of Cobra Commander. Interesting that he's going to be in Classifieds. I feel like he would be a better O-Ring release just because the movie is so tied into the vintage line. But with Nemesis Immortal being rumored for Classifieds or being announced as a name-only figure for Classifieds also, maybe they're going to do a lot of guys from 87. I mean, I see a lot of that happening with, they've done Crocmaster, they've done Big Boa, Techno-Viper. You know, they're doing a lot of figures from that era of the line. That's probably one of the designer's favorite years, perhaps. So, you know, getting a lot of movie characters possibly makes sense. They've also done a ton of female characters, so I figured it was only a matter of time before they get to Pythona. So we'll have Cobra Commander half turned into a snake. Next up, we've got Big Boa, a childhood favorite of mine. I had Big Boa, and he used to beat the living crud out of people all the time. Go up against Sergeant Slaughter a lot, personally, because the Sarge was the toughest Joe in my playtime storylines. And Big Boa came with boxing gloves and a boxing, like, dummy. Not a lot of weaponry. Even the boxing dummy thing wasn't really like a mallet or something that he could use in a fight, although sometimes I pretended he could. But Big Boa just is amazing with the spikes and the helmet, and how do you box a guy in a helmet? But he's just super cool, and he was supposed to, like, be the trainer for Cobra, kind of the way Sergeant Slaughter was a drill instructor and is going to whip the Joes into shape. Big Boa just is awesome. He's got the blue pants with the red padding. He's got red piping on his boots. He's got the crisscross spiked bands. Still just as painful to hold as a toy as he was when I was a kid. And that helmet just looks awesome. And this time you won't lose the little mouthpiece breather tube. Interestingly enough, he came unmasked in the package, showing off a face that's missing a tooth and has sort of like dark rings around his eyes, possibly black eyes. He was unmasked in a comic book storyline before, so that's where that comes from, but I prefer him with the helmet on. He does come with hands that are wrapped, like a MMA fighter's hands might be, and they have blood stains on the wraps. But he also comes with swappable boxing glove hands, which I prefer. The vintage figure had gloves that fit over his hands, which was a really neat feature. But here in the modern age where we can switch the hands, they just unplug. They come with little cuff pieces that finish the illusion of them being boxing gloves that I think work out really well. He also comes with some dumbbells, so if you wanted to be lifting weights and working out or training your Cobra Troopers, you've got some weights to go with them. He does not have his practice dummy. I figure someday if they end up releasing him as a retro card, they will include that and drop the unmasked head and maybe the weights even to give him more of his classic look. But overall, I think he looks fantastic, and this is exactly the kind of thing I think Classifieds does well. This looks like the vintage toy. He has some extra parts so you can do other looks or other things with him, but they didn't distract from the core concept of the character, and I think that's perfect. Next up, I've got Airborne, and Airborne is not a must-have character for me in the G.I. Joe universe. Great figure, a traditional figure from the original era of G.I. Joe. Like I said, 84 has been getting a lot of love. just not a super important character to me in the mythos. Basically, as a kid, I didn't have Airborne. I had Spirit, so I already had a Native American guy. I had Ripcord, who was a parachute guy. Ripcord being a helicopter assault trooper, I didn't really know what his job was. They show him dangling from a rope on his card art, but to me, I always thought he was a parachuter for some reason, even though he's not really. He's like a guy that's going to rappel from a helicopter to rescue people or to get into combat. I don't know. I didn't have him, so I just didn't fall in love with the character. He's not in a lot of the continuity stuff. He's, in the comics a little bit. He's in the cartoon a little bit. But glad they made him. I think he's a great-looking figure. He's going to look great with the Dragonfly. Just isn't, if I was really picking and choosing even harder, he might be one I would have skipped. So Airborne comes with a removable helmet, which is always nice. His helmet has a couple different options with it. It's definitely one of these modernized Joe helmets that has all the extra detailing and the webbing. It's got a socket on the front that you can plug in some night vision goggles, again giving him that much more modern military look, a look that I'm not really going for with my Joes. So I'm glad they gave him a set of goggles that have like a cloth covering. You can clip that on the helmet and it covers up the socket. He also comes with a set of blue tinted lens goggles. Those fit on his face. So you actually have to take the helmet off, put those goggles on his head, then you can put the helmet back on, and now he's wearing the goggles. That's a fun option to give him. Kind of looks, gives you more ability to create different looks. It makes sense for a guy hanging from a helicopter to wear actual goggles over his eyes, because that rotor wash has got to be a pain in the neck. On his side, he has a little holster for a pistol. That pistol looks like it's meant to be able to use a silencer. He also has a spot to hold a silencer. Well, the silencer actually comes with his submachine gun, which definitely is Beachhead's machine gun. They didn't tool up an exact weapon for Airborne, or maybe they're saving it for if they do a retro card version of him, because this is definitely Beachhead's gun. But the silencer or suppressor is removable and could be put on the pistol or could be clipped on his pant leg. I currently have his knife there because my figure came defective, or I lost a piece. I am going to check the B-roll to see whether I lost a piece or it came without it, but the little tiny sheath that should be on his chest to hold the knife is missing. So I don't have a place for his knife, so his knife is just in that suppressor slot on his leg there. I do love the rappelling harness that is attached to his belt here. It goes around his legs. That is an awesome touch, and I like how it's actually like a separate piece with a little slack in there. It just looks really good, giving him the the apparatus he would need to rappel from a helicopter. I'm almost surprised they didn't give him a little clip the way like the vintage Hit and Run had a clip you could run the rope through. He also comes with a backpack. The backpack has a shovel on it, an important detail from the original backpack, but he doesn't have the bedroll that goes over the top, so it doesn't look exactly like the vintage one. It has the key components, which I kind of noticed with the vintage card Recondo. I mentioned his backpack wasn't exactly the vintage toys backpack, but, has the elements there. We can't get everything exactly the way we want on every release. He does have a nice Tampo rank insignia on his shoulder, which looks fantastic. And overall, it's a pretty nice figure. I got no complaints, really, other than that mine's missing his chest sheath. And this Beachhead gun has got me definitely excited for Retro Beachhead to get released. Next from this wave, we've got Quick Kick. This guy gets a lot of flack in GI Joe lore. He doesn't wear a shirt, doesn't wear shoes. They introduce him in the cartoon in the Arctic without shoes and a shirt. I don't know, but Quick Kick was a cool figure. He's a karate guy. He's an infantry guy. Specialities, silent weapons. G.I. Joe always had a lot of sci-fi and a lot of ninjas in it. Quick Kick is a cool one. So we've got Quick Kick in Classifieds finally. People were doing customs of him when they did the Shang-Chi Marvel Legends figure a long time ago, pre-Shang-Chi movie. But he looks fantastic. They have modernized him a little bit. They gave him some little detailing on the side of his pants, which looks cool. Again, that's one of those details they'll probably drop if they ever do a retro card release of him. They also added storage for his nunchucks on his belt, so he's a little bit like Michelangelo here. But I like that detail. The nunchucks are very rubbery. He's got his wristbands. He's got his bandolier of ninja stars. He comes with a backpack. And now this backpack, I wonder if this was designed to share with Jinx, but I don't think Jinx comes with a backpack. Maybe she does. So this backpack holds 2 swords and is molded in red. The original backpack for him is gray, so again, if they do a retro release, they might change that up. But he can hold 2 swords in the back there. They're very small, slender swords. They look good. He only originally came with 1 sword, just like he only came with 1 nunchuck. But giving him 2 of each thing, I mean, that's always cool. Kind of pluses him up. I don't know if they did the red to match the sash, because technically that's the only thing that could hold the backpack on is that sash. Again, a silly thing. That's also why I think the smaller backpack that only holds 1 weapon makes maybe a little bit more sense for him. How much gear can he carry on this bandolier? Quick Kick comes with several hands, and I often joke about how I don't need all the extra hands in modern collector lines. You know, occasionally there's guys that need extra hands. Quick Kick, I think, is the right guy out of this whole wave. He's the only guy that came with extra hands, and he's the only guy that needs them. He's got accessory holding hands, he's got fists, and he's got karate chop hands. That all makes sense. He does come with a second head with slightly windswept hair. It's honestly not that much different from the main head. It's nice, but I didn't really need it. Granted, that's great. They're not shortchanging us on piece count or anything like that. But, you know, maybe you need your Quick Kick's hair blowing in the breeze. I'm probably not using that head too much. He also comes with his Fudgy Bar, which is a accessory based on his first appearance in the cartoon. And he also comes with a, like, mutant power effect. I don't know, just kind of teasing there. But this is like an energy effect is what it looks like to me. But it's him throwing a ninja star. It's 3 different ninja stars with a little blue swoosh connecting them, and the one has some silver paint on it. So this is so you can pose him throwing it. I don't know. Again, great try. It doesn't. I don't need it. I don't really see. It doesn't look right to me. It needs to be clear plastic probably for me to buy into it. Being like a whoosh. But, you know, hey, I love that they're trying. I love that they're putting a lot of accessories in with these guys. And his sculpting, like the musculature on his chest and his feet and everything, they really knocked it out of the park with this guy. Next up is Techno-Viper. He is a classic character, finally brought into Classifieds. He was one of my best friend growing up's favorite figures. And his dad tells the story that Derek walked into a room with a card back or the little pack-in catalog saying to his dad, "I'm looking for the purple guy. I'm looking for this purple guy." And his dad took it to mean, you know, can you buy me the purple guy? So they went out to the store, and they looked around a couple different places, and finally they found a Techno-Viper. And he's such a good figure. It's so interesting because he's like a support role character. He's a mechanic, basically. But they gave him such a cool design that you want to use him as a frontline trooper. The Techno-Viper is really an awesome figure with 2 different shades of purple. He's got some really cool designs going on with his helmet, and I feel like they did an even better job of capturing the look of his card art on the vintage figure with this head versus the vintage head. I love all the silver piping on his uniform, the big silver Cobra logo and everything. He just looks fantastic. They've souped up his detail a little bit, so just like how I was saying Classified often takes that vintage figure, but like adds something, kind of pluses him up a little bit. He's got these big computer readout gauntlets. There's actually like a energy effect type of thing, like a projection screen. Again, it's kind of neat. It works in certain lighting, maybe it kind of works well. I don't really need this little screen, but I like it. I think it's a nice attempt. I think it's a better attempt than the Ninja Star, perhaps. But it pegs into his arm, and he can look at a little projected readout. I mean, they might as well have given you a little hologram Cobra Commander for him to talk to at this point. But he's pulling up some specs, so that's kind of neat. He just looks fantastic. He does have a little holster on his side with a removable pistol. That looks really good. But kind of the main feature of Techno-Viper is his backpack. And I've debated whether it should go with the tanks at the top or the tanks at the bottom. It does have a handle on it, So, and the vintage one did too, so he could, like, carry it like a toolkit. The tanks feel like they should be at the top in a lot of ways, but with the handle being on it, it makes you think that the handle will go at the top. But his backpack has 2 purple tanks. It comes with 1 hose. I wouldn't have minded 2, but the 1 hose can be pegged into either one of the tanks, and then it can be pegged into his weapon. Is this a laser? Is this a welder? I never really knew what his weapon was, but that's maybe part of the fun of the Techno-Viper. I found it a little bit harder to get it in his hands with it plugged in at the top. Having the backpack flipped over with the handle at the top made the cord a little bit easier to reach his hands for that weapon. And then his backpack, of course, also houses his 3 tools, which can also be plugged into the tank, that same rope. He has 2 different, like, wrenches or pincher hands, and he has a hammer. These are all fantastic. The original vintage figure came with silver tools. I assume they didn't want to paint these because they figured the paint might rub off, putting them in and out of the backpack. It's also interesting to note that they're about the same size as the vintage tools, making them much smaller and much more realistic for the 6-inch scale Techno-Viper to hold. These tools were enormous for the original Techno-Viper. I often use that hammer as like a weapon, even though it was supposed to be a tool. You might as well have him bludgeon somebody with it. Super awesome figure. I know some people always wonder like about army building, and I definitely am trying not to army build like crazy with this line, but Techno-Viper is so cool. I did buy 2. So in the comments down below, let me know which one of these figures is your favorite or which one you would have passed on. Thanks so much for watching the episode. Do me a favor, hit the like button or subscribe if you haven't done so. Share this video with a toy collecting friend. If you want to support the channel even further, consider joining us on Patreon. But thanks for hanging on the peg with me.